You know, in Hollywood, winning an Oscar for Best Actor, that's supposed to be a rocket ship, right? It's meant to launch you into this whole new stratosphere of stardom, with the best scripts, all the influence. But what happens when that rocket just kind of fizzles out on the launch pad? Well, that is the paradox of Rami Malek.
I mean, think about it. The guy conquered television, winning an Emmy for his incredible work on Mr. Robot. Then he turns around and conquers the entire world and the Academy with his mesmerizing portrayal of Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. He had reached the absolute peak, the top of the mountain. He should have been the next big thing, the next Leonardo DiCaprio, getting his pick of every major project out there. But instead, his career momentum just stalled. It's like it hit a brick wall. He went back to playing supporting roles, and that brief, brilliant moment as a top-tier leading man just seemed to vanish. So what on earth went wrong? To really understand what happened, you can't just point to one bad movie or some big personal scandal. It's not that simple. His story is way more complicated. It's not really a story of bad choices, but one of just profound misfortune. Malek's career path was basically derailed by a perfect storm of things, and a lot of them were completely out of his hands. And to really get how this all went down, we've got to go back to the very beginning. See, his journey to becoming a star is totally tangled up with his identity. From day one, he was never your typical Hollywood hopeful, not even close.
So picture this. Malek grew up in this bubble of Egyptian culture, but right in the middle of Los Angeles. His parents, they made sure their home was way more Egyptian than American. We're talking the food, the music, the customs, even the language. In fact, he spoke Arabic at home and didn't even learn English until he was 4 years old. His dad would actually wake him up super early, like at dawn, just to call family back in Egypt. And you can imagine, this created this huge sense of conflict for him. In America, he never felt fully American, but to his family back home, he wasn't quite Egyptian either. He was stuck in the middle, an outsider. And that feeling, it would literally come to define his life and his acting.
And yeah, his path into the industry was anything but a walk in the park. After getting his fine arts degree, he spent over a year and a half just stuffing his headshot into envelopes and hearing absolutely nothing back. He ended up moving back in with his parents, delivering pizzas and making shawarma sandwiches just to make ends meet. His first real break was this tiny role on Gilmore Girls, which then led to him playing a pretty stereotypical pharaoh in Night at the Museum. But then came the turning point, his role in the HBO series The Pacific. He was so good that Tom Hanks himself sent him a personal letter of praise. It really felt like things were finally starting to happen for him. But even as he started to get more work, that feeling of being an outsider never really went away. And he said it best himself, you know? He said he never thought he could be a leading man because Hollywood just never showed him anyone who looked like him in those kinds of roles. He was basically conditioned to see himself on the sidelines. And then this role came along that took his biggest perceived weakness and turned it into his greatest strength, Elliot Alderson and Mr. Robot. He played this brilliant, socially anxious, and deeply alienated hacker, and he poured all of his own personal feelings of isolation right into that character. The performance was just a revelation. It was so raw, so authentic, and it didn't just win him an Emmy, it put him on the map as one of the most compelling actors of his generation. Of course, his success in Mr. Robot is what led directly to him being cast as Freddie Mercury, which then led to the Oscar. Now, this should have been his big coronation moment. But, as it turns out, that crown was a lot heavier and maybe a lot more hollow than anyone realized.
Right, so his win was complicated by this whole storm of things going on outside of his performance. First off, the political timing. With all the fierce anti-immigrant talk in the air, having the son of Egyptian immigrants win Best Actor was immediately framed as a big political statement. Then you had the whole scandal with the film's director, Bryan Singer, who was fired from the movie amid some really serious allegations, which just cast a dark shadow over the entire project. The win also happened right when Hollywood was having this intense but brief push for diversity, which kind of led to this representation fatigue for some people, where the story around the win became bigger than the performance itself. And finally, let's be honest, the movie was a massive hit because of Freddie Mercury, not because of Rami Malek. The character was the star, not the actor.
And all of these complications, they just fed right into a much older, much deeper problem in Hollywood, a systemic one that Rami Malek ran into headfirst, Oscar in hand. Okay, let's talk about a key industry buzzword, marketability. For decades, this has really been code for an actor's ability to appeal to what studios see as the default, mainstream audience. And for a very long time, that default has been white.
So actors from minority backgrounds are often seen as a tougher sell to a global audience, and that prejudice limits the kinds of roles they get offered, no matter how talented they are. And the result of this bias? It becomes crystal clear when you just compare his career path to his peers. After they won their Oscars, people like Jennifer Lawrence, Matthew McConaughey, Eddie Redmayne, they were all immediately launched into one major leading role after another. And Rami Malek? He gets offered a Bond villain, and then a bunch of supporting parts. The difference is it's undeniable. The opportunities he was given were just not in the same league. So instead of capitalizing on his Oscar-winning stardom, Hollywood kind of capitalized on his perceived otherness. He was funneled directly into these typecast roles, the complex, mysterious, often villainous parts that played on his unique look, but never really allowed him to become that versatile, bankable leading man. And if those systemic issues weren't enough of a hurdle, the final blow to his momentum came from two devastating strokes of pure, simple bad luck. First up, the pandemic. The timing could not have been worse. Just as he should have been riding this huge wave from his Oscar win, the entire world shuts down. The whole industry just grinds to a halt for nearly 2 years. And by the time things started back up, that precious buzz had completely vanished. Then came what was supposed to be his big test, playing the main villain in a James Bond film, No Time to Die. This was his shot to prove he could carry a blockbuster. But the role itself was a total disaster, and it really wasn't his fault. His character, Seyfin, doesn't even show up until 2 hours into a nearly 3-hour movie, and his motivations are a complete mess. Why is he doing any of this? Why does he hate Bond? The script gives us absolutely nothing to go on. It was just this underdeveloped, thinly written character that gave him nothing to work with. Look, he did everything he could with the tiny bit he was given. He absolutely passed the test as an actor, but the role itself completely failed him. The part was so fundamentally broken that the whole opportunity was just wasted. The test was rigged from the very start. And the result of all this? Well, he was kind of back where he started, taking these interesting but small supporting roles in big ensemble movies like Amsterdam and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. That window to really establish himself as a top-tier leading man, it just seemed to have closed. So when you really step back and look at the whole picture, this quote says it all. His path isn't a story of failure, not at all. It's a story of profound misfortune. It's a case study in terrible timing, systematic biases, and just plain old bad luck hitting again and again and again. He was always in the right place, but at the exact wrong time. Which really, it leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? Rami Malek did everything right. He honed his craft. He took a massive risk on a hugely challenging role. And he reached the absolute pinnacle of his profession. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. It really makes you wonder, in an industry that's built on dreams, how much of success is actually about skill, and how much of it just comes down to the luck of the draw?